The Simpsons on Sky One with Domino's new hot and spicy meltdown pizza.
A little under a year ago, I made a video looking at Sky Games, and in making it, I spent days trying to find even the smallest sliver of footage of these games to feed my nostalgia. Well, it seems like I'm not the only one who had some nostalgia for these games. After seeing all your positive comments, I absolutely loved reading everyone's comments and everyone sharing all their memories of Sky Games. But I didn't really have anything else to say on the subject. I mean, I'd used the little bit of footage that I'd found, and the only actually playable game was Tom and Jerry, with the rest of the games being completely lost to time. Until a few months ago, that is, when I saw the Sky Games Guy Twitter account had posted a link to another game. Then they posted another, and another. And it turns out that Denki, the company who made most of the Sky Games, are now making more and more games playable again. But that's not all. Since making that video, the Sky Games community has exploded, and new footage, new websites, and so much more now exists. And it turns out that a lot of these people were in fact inspired by my video, so I'm not taking all the credit for other people's work. But at the same time, I also kind of am. No, of course not. I'm just an idiot making videos. You guys with all your passion have done something I never would have dreamed of a year ago. So without wasting any more time, let's take a look at some of these games and find out if they're as good as I remember. So first of all, the controls have been fixed and now you can play it using a standard keyboard, unlike the Tom and Jerry game which required a number pad, which is just going to make them a whole lot easier to play. So let's start with my all-time favourite Sky game, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Cat's Kidnap. If you watched my previous video on Sky Games, then you'll know that this game only existed as like a 1 minute poorly filmed video on someone's TV. But not anymore. Here it is. Here is the actual game, and oh, it just is so good. And it's actually even better than I remembered it. There's no input lag, and as I'm no longer a stupid 7-year-old who doesn't know how to use a map, I can actually know where I'm going in the haunted house. Oh, it's just so good. So, you explore the mansion as Courage, trying to find keys to unlock doors and explore more of the house, whilst trying to find Eustace and Muriel. What's fun about this game is the sense of progression you get. You start off with no weapons at all, then you unlock a way to stun the enemies, then finally you can straight up kill them. And when you kill them, they're gone for good. You can leave the map, come back, they're gone. So you can fully clear out this house of bugs and ghosts. I don't know, maybe putting a futon, a picture of your nan, really spruce up the place. I got all the keys, I went to the final boss battle with cats, and the game crashed. I found this happened a lot when I played it on Safari, so I recommend if you're going to be playing these games to play them on Chrome, as there I had no problems with the games at all. So I played the game all again, defeated all the enemies, got all the keys, got to the final boss, and I did it! They're saved. Next up we have Dexter's Lab Dorkster's Revenge. This one is a Metroidvania where you explore a huge map, and this one seems like quite an early game as the controls are extra stiff and movement is very slow. Like, come on Dexter, I know running's not your thing, but could you at least walk just a tiny bit faster? You did it in the opening. Then when you get the ability to fly about, that's even slower and even harder to control. So I kept accidentally hitting all the robots and the enemies, and didn't last long at all. A thing which is a bit annoying about these games is how when you die, that's it. You have to go all the way back to the start. A lot of the games give you passwords, which I'm sure work just fine on Skyboxes, but now they just don't work at all. Which means if you want to complete the game, you have to do it in one perfect run, which can be very hard in some of these games. Next up we have SpongeBob SquarePants Bikini Bottom Bother. And this is another kind of slow one. These games don't expect you to press more than one button at a time, so here you have to jump, then when you're in the air you can move left and right. Luckily you have a glide which can help with this, and the game will auto jump when you run to the edge of a ledge, but that then makes it tricky to fall down a ledge, because you have to press the down button. The controls can be a bit fiddly, but once you get the hang of it, it's quite fun. This is a 2D maze game consisting of 12 levels. There were a couple of weird bugs in this one, like the please wait stayed on the screen, and in the final cutscene, Squidward's icon replaces King Neptune. What are you doing, Squidward? You're not the king. Where'd King Neptune go, Squidward? What did you do to him? What did you do? Also, you may notice that when you get to the edge of the screen, it loads another screen rather than just scrolling from left to right. And I found out from one of the developers that games like this weren't allowed to scroll, as some skyboxes just couldn't handle it. But weirdly, they could scroll up and down. so that's why a lot of these games have to load each individual screen.
Duck! Duck!
What is it, dog?
Could we push the red button?
Yes, dog.
Hulk is probably my least favourite game so far, as it's very slow and monotonous. Just a case of killing all the enemies on the screen, then moving up to the next screen. Then the helicopters show up and they can only be attacked by throwing things, and often there's not enough things to throw, so I just had to wait for the helicopters to fly away, and it just took forever. Then after you progress through 5 indistinguishable levels, you get to this big dot, which I thought would be a boss, but it wasn't. It was just another identical level. There's 3 different locations, and they're all pretty much the same. This one is just so boring and monotonous and tedious to play, so I definitely recommend that you skip this game. Look, I'm sorry, they can't all be winners. The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy is a 2D puzzle platformer where you control both Billy and Mandy. You swap between them and use them to pull levers and open doors to allow the other one to progress. You can also use Grimm's spells to transform, like Mandy can turn into a monkey. It's fun, but also surprisingly tricky, and I got stuck at one point. Then I got properly stuck down this pit and had no more magic left to turn back into a monkey, so I just had to give up. Shrek Fiona's Rescue is another 2D platformer. Not much to say about this one, it's pretty similar to SpongeBob. I mean, most of these games follow a pretty rigid formula, which is what allowed the team to complete each game in roughly 6 weeks, which is legitimately really impressive. Ed, Edd and Eddy, the Night of the Living Ed, is based on the episode where Ed thinks he's a monster and sticks all the kids up alien style with chunky puffs. This game involves you having to go around and save the kids while collecting jawbreakers. And there are a lot more kids than I remember. Like, sometimes you're saving the characters you recognise, but most of the time you're just saving these generic kids that I've never seen before. This cul-de-sac is a lot more populated than I thought. This one's just a lot of fun exploring the cul-de-sac, and there's a final boss where you fight Ed, and it's great. I love this one. I also like how Eddy says, if you need help, call this actual phone number. Whatever you say, Mr. Eddy.
Hello! Ed and Eddy's Pesky Problem Fixers. Got a problem that's pesky? We'll fix her for just 1 lousy quarter. What do you mean you're broke? Hey, if you're looking for charity, call Kids Next Door. They're cheap.
Kids Next Door. Codename Kids Next Door Operation Bittersweet is a similar Metroidvania type game where you're trying to save the other kids from Sticky Beard and his pirates. In this one you can only jump straight up, which limits the movement even more than SpongeBob, and it's another case of exploring the ship looking for keys to open doors. I didn't get very far in this one at all, as there's these guys that throw lollipops and they're just impossible to avoid. You have to use candy canes as ammo to throw at them, but I kept running out of candy canes or not throwing them fast enough, and yeah, I just died a lot. Sorry Kids Next Door, but the pirates are just gonna have to eat you. Tetris. It's Tetris. It works fine. I don't know what you want me to say. It's Tetris. Moving on. Next up we have Pac-Man, and yeah, it's a pretty competent version of Pac-Man. You eat the dots, you avoid ghosts, it's Pac-Man. The art style looks nice. I believe there's 15 different levels in the game, although obviously I've not got anywhere close to that because I'm simply not very good at Pac-Man. But yeah, this is fine. Out of all the different versions of Pac-Man that I've played in my life, this is certainly one of them. Okay, next up we have Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And this is certainly the game that I've been playing the most. It's another top-down game, except here you're exploring Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And you're tasked with killing a load of sentient furniture in order to retrieve some keys for some clocks. The way you kill the furniture is pretty interesting, as you don't have a standard attack. Instead you have to go behind chairs and kick them at enemies, which can be pretty tricky as you have to line them up correctly, whilst also dodging their attacks, which is kind of the reason I played this game so much. I'd always get around 2/3 into the game and then die and then be so annoyed, because again with these games if you die you have to start all the way back from the beginning. In the game you're also able to go through portals and transport between the past and the future, which I think is a really cool concept that never gets explored in the actual show. And it's really fun getting to see what the house looked like in the past or getting to see it all crumbled and decayed in the future. One thing I will recommend if you decide to play this game is to only collect the piece of cake if you really need it. If you have full health, do not collect the cake. Leave them, as you will need them later on in the game, as the bookshelf, sofas, fireplaces and also these little stalls just become a nightmare as you go through the game. But yep, on like my 6th attempt, I did finally complete the game and got all the keys and was met with a really anticlimactic ending. I'm not sure what I expected, but this little guy wasn't it. Next up we have the Muppets Backstage Rampage, and it's another game like Shrek or SpongeBob, except this time you get to play as Miss Piggy, the absolute worst of the Muppets. You couldn't have let me play as Kermit or Gonzo or even Fozzie Bear. No, you gave me Miss Piggy. I suppose it makes sense because she can use her karate moves as an attack. But come on, Miss Piggy. I would have even preferred to play as Waldorf and Statler. But no, them and all the other Muppets are caged up. Pretty good game though, if nothing new. Next we have Super Breakout, and I'm sorry, but this may be the worst version of Breakout I've ever played. The ball just moves so slowly. I get that with a TV remote they may have anticipated a bit of input lag, but this is just silly. And what's one of the power-ups you can get? A snail to make the ball go even slower. The movement of the paddle also seems a bit off, as it initially moves quite slowly and then when you continue holding down the button it moves quite fast, which is something I found a bit difficult to get used to. I think even the developers started to realise that this game was a bit too slow, because when there were only a few blocks left on the screen, the game just sends down a bomb which allows you to explode the rest of the blocks. So you don't have to spend ages fiddly getting the ball onto the final couple blocks. Which was nice but doesn't save the game. Definitely avoid this one. Now we have what I think is probably the best of the Sky games so far. Looney Tunes Back in Action. This again follows the top-down formula seen in Courage the Cowardly Dog and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, except here you control 2 characters, that being Bugs and Daffy. And whilst you're mostly going around collecting keys and breaking apart furniture to find money, this game just feels extra super duper polished. So here we have Denki Blocks, which is named after Denki, the company which made all these Sky games that I've talked about today, and is in fact the very first game that they created for Sky, all the way back in 2001. The game has a pretty simple concept where you're trying to join blocks together, except when you move one block, you're moving every single block there is. So you need to somehow manoeuvre the blocks around the stage in order to get them to match up. Sometimes you have to match specific colours, sometimes you have to make specific shapes. It's a clever little game and I can understand how people would really get addicted to it, but for me it's just too hard. I'm sorry, I'm just not very good at this game at all. And as a result, any level past the tutorial stages just frustrates me beyond belief. I'm definitely in the minority though, as this game was really popular. So popular in fact that it wasn't just restrained to Sky games, as it got ported to Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and there's even a version for the PSP. But what about you? I know you've been patiently watching this video, just waiting to find out how you can play these games for yourself. Well, it's not difficult at all. You can play them right now in your browser. If you follow the link in the description, you will find the complete list of games that are available. And that list is growing all the time, thanks to the tireless effort of Aaron, a Denki employee who is going through all the effort of making each of these games playable again. And do you remember in my last video where I spent ages trying to find even the slightest bit of footage to prove the Wallace and Gromit game existed? Well, I asked him if he'd be able to get that game working, and initially he said he wouldn't be able to because it wasn't archived properly, but then he managed to get it working. And here it is, after all these years, Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Something that last year I could barely find evidence of it even existing, now I can play it whenever I want, and so can you. If you're interested in keeping up to date with all the Sky Games news, then I absolutely recommend joining the Discord server, where you can personally show your appreciation for all of Aaron's hard work, as well as speak to the rest of the community who are going to loads of effort to keep these games alive. And the guys in the Discord server are doing amazing things. From adding mobile phone and controller support, they even made an interface which looks like the old Sky menus that you can use in your browser. And if that wasn't enough, you can also use that on a Steam Deck. A year ago when I first made that video, I couldn't have dreamed of this being reality. But as it turns out, I massively underestimated just how many people were interested in keeping these Sky games alive. And I'm currently working with someone to get my Sky gamepad to work as an input for these games. So hopefully by the next video I will have that working. Also, if you want to hear me talk about more of these games, then be sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, and I'm gonna go get back to playing some more games. I'll see you in the next video.
Hal and Lois create a love triangle in brand new Malcolm in the Middle at 7. First though, Simon Cowell is holding court in a brand new Simpsons.
The Simpsons on Sky One, sponsored by Domino's new reduced fat cheese.